I've got a story for you.
Okay.
Little kids are something else. So I go to work and I swing by and one of the kids is not doing their work, and I'm like, okay, make sure you're doing your work. And I'm working with another kid, and I come back, and the kid that's not the first kid that I was talking to is playing with something. I look down, he's playing with this little string, and I look closer, and that little piece of string is my hair. And I'm just like, are you playing with my hair? And he just looks up at me and he goes, mm-hmm. And I just yank it right out of his hands because, first of all, what the hell? Second of all, what the hell? And then, like, I walk off, and, like, I'm not the only one. We have, like, 5 other people that are working there. And so we're all supposed to make sure that the kids are staying in task. Third, why wasn't anybody else making sure they were staying on task? So I just yanked it out of his hands. The lady turns around that was closest to him and was just like, she looks at me, I look at her, and I'm just have like this, what? Look, and she just looks at me like, I don't even know. I don't even know. So,
Wow.
yeah. Real intro. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Deanna. And we're
The Halfwit sisters. This time I got you our new intro.
no, you still haven't.
Yes, I did. It's in our thing. It's in our
Oh,
OneDrive. It's in
okay.
the OneDrive.
I'll download that.
I put it there too. I was upset when I didn't see it on our new thing, but this time I did. I do have it. I guess I forgot to tell you where it was at. It's in our
Yeah,
OneDrive.
you said you were sending it to me and you never sent anything. I was like, okay.
Yeah, no, because so we like our file sharing sometimes ends up all over the place. So the first time I sent it through our Facebook message through our messenger. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but this time I put it in our OneDrive, so it's on the OneDrive.
Okay. I'll
Last
grab that.
episode we talked about Soul. We reviewed the
Soul.
movie Soul. We also talked about job searching and how frustrating that was. And we talked about why we got into a fight the week before. And we also talked about Inside Out and how it can help further the conversation with mental wellness and mental health.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I did read that article you sent me, by the way, about Soul.
mhm.
I don't really agree.
Neither did I. So the article, I'll post it down in the description. It was written by it's called what was it
The
called again?
Trouble of Soul.
Yeah,
Pixar's Troubled Soul or something like that.
Pixar's Troubled Soul. It came from looking at it.
Solely
We'll
through the
just
lens of Black culture.
yeah, through Black culture, and in a way, I understand where they're coming from. I get why they came from it. They were looking at it through like you said, Black culture, and uh, I
Let's preface this with saying, while we are Latina, we were raised in white culture, in American culture. So we don't have that lens of Black culture.
so would we be considered Latino, El Salvador?
Yeah,
Okay, I usually just stick with Hispanic
yeah.
because I never know.
Recently, I've tried to make sure that I'm using Latina because that's technically what we are. Because as far as the limited research I've done was Hispanic is a native from Spain and Latina is Central America.
Okay.
But so technically we're Latinas, but we weren't really raised with the Latin culture.
Right. Our mom did not raise us with much understanding of what like El Salvadorian culture is. She had her reasons, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
well, also we moved so much, we weren't surrounded by
Yeah.
others of the culture, and so we
Yeah.
we don't have.
So what, and I say let's preface this is like we don't we are not an authority, or we don't get to say if someone's overreaching on something. We can just give
Mhm.
our opinion from our perspective.
Yeah.
I read the article, I understood what they were saying, but I thought they were looking at the movie solely from one perspective and not necessarily the perspective that the creators of the movie were meaning for them to look through.
Right. I mean, like they even say in the article like they had an extensive crew that was meant to that like look at it like how do we represent, because they knew they
Yeah.
were going to have a black character, how do we represent correctly, and what do we bring into the film from that angle. And I think they made some really smart choices. uh, so again, we'll leave it down in the description below for you to read and see what you think about that. I'm kind of the same opinion. I think that I, I don't I don't really agree with the article, but again, we're not black,
Yeah.
so what can we say?
Yeah. But it is a good read. They make some points that I'm like, yeah, I can see that. But there's just like certain phrases that they said that I'm just like, okay, but that's solely from your perspective and from the and your take on what the movie should have done to further Black culture, and that wasn't what the movie was about.
Right.
It
Right.
wasn't about this Black, and there are other movies that they mentioned that totally do this, but I didn't think that this movie was, that's what they were trying to do. So, but
Mhm.
read it, give your opinions down in the comment section below, and yeah. But I just wanted to let you know, Becca, that I had read it.
Cool.
But
Cool. So this episode, you wanted to get into the mess that's been going on with this Wall Street. I know nothing about this, but besides what's been going on in the news, the mess that's been going on with hedge funds and the single,
retail investors.
yeah. And I don't really have much to add because it's never been an interest of mine, and it goes far over my head when that stuff starts getting involved. So take it away. Oh, and as far as like what my topic is going to be, I have no idea. So stay tuned.
So, first off, I want to put in these two TikToks. So they're by the same creator, and they kind of explain the stock market in a very vague and what's happened in the stock market in a way that's easier to understand. And I sent you one, and I didn't send you the other. But the other one, I'll send that to you after this. Um, but here those are.
Let's say you have a necklace that you think is really valuable. A lot of people think it's really valuable. I think it's shit. Your necklace is overvalued. I say, hey, I'll pay you 20 bucks if I can borrow your necklace for a month. At the end of the month, I'll give it back. You agree to that, I give you your 20 bucks, you give me your necklace. I immediately sell your necklace for $500. A month passes, I track down your necklace to see who's selling it, so that I can buy it back so I can give it to you, because I'm legally required to give it back to you. And what do you know? The person who has it now realizes what I realized, that your necklace is shit, and they're selling it for 5 bucks. I pay them 5 bucks, I get the necklace back, I give it back to you, I've spent 25 bucks, I've made 500 bucks from my first sale. In total, I've made $475. Alternatively, I was wrong, your necklace was not shit. Turns out it was in fact very valuable and I undervalued it. And so I go back, track it down. It's currently valued at $1,000. I am legally required to buy it back so I can give it back to you. So I spend $1,000, and I've lost $520.
And so the first one is talking about the necklace, and the other one's talking about a potato farm.
So I'm a potato farmer. I do pretty well for myself, but I don't have enough money to grow my business. Namely, I want to buy out my neighboring farm. And I have this big-ass potato that just sits in my lawn. It is the symbol of my potato farming company. And what I decide to do is I cut off little pieces of this big-ass potato, and I sell them to people. And I use the money that I make to grow my business. The thing is, though, these potato bits that I'm selling, they don't grow. You can't eat them. And yet people buy them anyways. Why? Because I told people that they're worth something. And they believe me. I'm playing mind games on the general public. And so I sell them for like $100 a piece. And then my business does really good that year because of all the extra money that I had. I was able to grow my business. And I used that money that I had to buy back the pieces of potato that I sold to people. But they want something out of it for having provided me the money in the first place. And so I buy back my potato bits for a higher price than I sold them. Everyone wins.
And it's a great way to start the understanding of the stock market, because the stock market is complicated. And I tried to like put in my own words, and I just got a headache trying to figure it all out. But what happened with GameStop, if you've seen it in the news but haven't really been following the story, is a whole bunch of hedge funds were short selling these stocks to keep the price down. And then a Reddit group, Wall Street Bets, figured out what was happening because I think the hedge funds accidentally sold more than what was actually available or something like that. Because there are apparently missing stocks. But so the Wall Street Bets and the retail investors, which is what people who like use Robinhood, and it's just like not like their life, but just like a thing they do, found out what the hedge funds were doing, bought the GameStop shares, and then, unlike what hedge funds do, held on to them, which drove the price up. Because just like with any kind of retail thing, you have high demand but low stock, the price goes up, and vice versa. So Wall Street Bets hung on to their stuff, drove the price up, and started making the hedge funds lose money. And some people cashed out and were able to make, some of the retail investors cashed out and were able to make some big bucks, and all of this stuff is happening. But then Robinhood and some of the other places that retail investors use started putting limits on the stocks. At first it was like, oh, you can only sell. Now you're back to being able to buy, but you can only buy like 1 to 10 shares of certain price stocks. And people are pissed. There's also, Robinhood has been accused of selling stock without someone's permission. And it's just a whole big market of volatility. And hold on, let me pull up this article. So I'll put this article in the description down below as well. And it's by Robinhood Snacks, which is owned by Robinhood. And they're straight up with all of that, but they started explaining some of what happened and how Robinhood and such things work. I'll leave it down so you can read it, but the gist of it is you buy, but you don't actually receive your actual product for a couple days because it has to go, because all of this has to go through a clearinghouse. And so missing shares. People don't know where shares are. People are having to call in shares to figure out, oh, I want to sell, but my shares were borrowed out, because that's the thing you can do. You can lend out your shares, which is what market hedge funds do, and big old complicated mess, right? But you see all these articles of like people going, haha, down with hedge funds, down with hedge funds, I made bank, to the moon, to the moon. I'm so happy for these people who made money. I think it is hilarious because the hedge funds lost at their own game and now they're crying foul. It's hilarious. At the same time, I'm looking at all these retail investors who are like making the bank, and I'm like, hey guys, next year don't cry foul when you get taxed for it because you didn't read up on all of what happens when you own and sell stock, especially when you own and sell stuff, short sell stuff, which is really what I wanted to talk about. Was when you invest, it's a long-term thing, but what everyone has been doing with the GameStop and the AMC and the Nokia and all of this is they're doing betting, they're gambling, so they're going to get taxed for it, like 37% next year. And I don't think any of them know, because I was having conversations with some of my students who were like telling the other teacher, hey, you need to get on all these stocks. And I was like, oh, hey, kids, you do know that these are X, Y, and Z are going to happen too. You can't just buy and make the money and then own all of it. You get taxed for it too. I don't think any of them even realize still what's happening. But the whole meme train and everything that's happening with it is just
Okay, I'm confused. What are you trying to talk about here? You're like, look at this, and then look at this, and then look at this, and then look at this. I'm confused. What are you trying to talk about here?
I honestly, I don't know, because usually you ask questions and now I'm like, okay, these are all the things. And I'm sitting here looking at you going, hey, Becca, would you like clarification on something? I don't know. You're just staring at me.
I'm listening.
Because each little tidbit is like, okay, that was the end of that one. You still haven't said anything. The next point is this one. You still haven't said anything.
So, I mean, because I've been listening and I was like, okay, I get what you're saying. All right, that makes sense. Sure, that makes sense. And then you're like, the taxes. I was like, yeah, what about the taxes? And then I thought you were going to go into the taxes. You're like, and then my students don't understand. I was like, you're talking to your students about it. Great, good job. I'm sorry. I was like, keep going. You're passionate. I wasn't going to stop the passion train. So here's what I got. The hedge funds, they make the short bets, right? They were doing the thing.
They make money on short selling. So they hold on to something really for a short amount of time. That's what that TikTok was of, hey, I'm going to sell this because I'm going to borrow this from you, give you $20 for it. You think it's crap. You think it's gold. I think it's crap. Oh, look at that. The person I sold it to is like, yeah, it's crap and is selling for less than I sold it to them for.
You know what it reminds me of? The Beanie Baby boom. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay, so like in the 90s, Beanie Babies hit this big boom, and people were buying the hell out of them. And I forget what it was, but I'll have to find either the article or the video that I remember that was talking about it. But the Beanie Baby boom was like, one person was just like, oh, the Beanie Babies are going to be like this big thing. And everybody was like, oh, of course it's going to be this big thing. So everybody was buying up the Beanie Babies until it busted, right? So it was this bubble and then it busted. and then Beanie Babies were worth nothing. So people have this vast collection of Beanie Babies and rare Beanie Babies, but then nobody wanted them anymore because Beanie Babies were worth nothing, right? So the way that I take these hedge funds is, here's a stock. In the example of GameStop, you can tell me if I'm wrong. Here's a stock. I'm going to say that this stock is going to be worth nothing, right? And I'm going to bet that this stock is going to fail. And so I'm going to bet against this stock, right? And in the tone of what the Wall Street bets was like, you think it's nothing, but we're going to say it's worth everything. And we're going to toss everything into it so that now you're losing out because we said it was worth everything.
Yeah.
So that's what I got out of that.
Very similar, yes. So in the terms of the Beanie Babies, yeah, so you were basically what the hedge funds did was they borrowed for a low price from the owners of the Beanie Babies, went and sold it,
Mm-hmm.
and then because they borrowed it, they are legally required to give it back. So once it's time to give it back, they go and find where that Beanie Baby is now and buy it back from that person. Now, this might be the person they sold it to. It might be several people down the line of who's bought it. But either way, Wall Street hedge funds made the bet of, I bet when I buy it back, it's going to be worth less.
Mm-hmm.
And so they buy it back from that whoever has it now and give it back to the owner.
Right. And because the Wall Street bets dudes were like, ho ho, you thought it was going to be less, they now have to buy it back at a higher price.
Yes.
Because of that, to return it back to its original owner.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Because what they did was, instead of buying and selling like the hedge funds do, they bought.
Mm-hmm. And so they actually own that
held
share.
onto it. Yeah.
So they actually own that share. So because they own that share, now the hedge funds have to go and actually buy it from them.
Yeah.
Okay, so they borrowed. So essentially the hedge funds don't own it, and Wall Street Bets owns it. So they had to go over to Wall Street Bets and was like, "Hey, we borrowed that." And they're like, "Yeah, well, we own it." So they're like, "Well, we're going to have to buy that from you." And so Wall Street Bets is like, "Well, you're going to have to buy it from us because we actually own it while you were borrowing." And they're like, "Well, okay." So they have no choice.
And if Wall Street Bets doesn't want to sell it back, they have to go to someone else who has the exact same thing and buy from them. So if GameStop sold stocks to Billy, Sally, and Joel, and then Hedge Joel X amount of stocks, Sally and Bobby also have stocks, but the stocks that Hedge borrowed are over at Wall Street, then, and Wall Street's like, no, I'm not selling to you. They're mine now. Hedge has to go to the other two and be like, hey, I need X amount of stocks. And they gotta buy them at whatever price because they don't own the stocks. They have to sell them back.
Okay. So the next part about all that was the taxes.
Yes.
Okay. So Billy, Bob, and Joel, right? Whatever the names were you use, Billy, Bob, and Joel, they now own these stocks, right? But because they were selling and buying and selling and buying, right? Now they have this transactions that they have to report at the end of the year of how much they sold and how much they bought, right? Essentially reporting their losses and their gains.
Yes.
Right. Because of the way that we run as a country, we tax everything.
Yeah.
We tax everything. That includes what you buy and what you lose out on when it comes to things like our stock. You're saying that a lot of people who are first time buyer, like for a lot of people that just got onto this because they saw and heard about what was happening, they're like, oh, I want to go out on a, because a lot of this was motivated by Eat the Rich.
Yeah.
right? A lot of this was just motivated by the lower class, middle class, catching on to how the rich make their money, being angry about it, saying we want to stick it to the man, and jumping onto the stick it to the man train and going at it, right? But also, a lot of these people don't understand the way that that stuff works on the back end, and essentially some of the consequences that come with doing these buying and selling, right?
Yeah.
So now, come next year, they're going to have to start doing some new taxes, which is the taxes that you're talking about. And what are these
Yeah.
taxes?
So basically, when you own and when you sell and buy stock, you anything that you've lost can just be written off. It's a loss. That's what it is. But if you own it for less than a year, you get taxed to the highest tax bracket for that income because that's what it is. It's an income. And if you're new to taxes, are new to investing, you might not know this. If you're doing if you're doing these stocks as like a retail investor and it's your first time and you really haven't dabbled in any of it, you might not know this. I didn't know this until a coworker who I created a monster with him, I swear. I'm sorry.
Hey,
He
DJ,
really
just
got
real quick.
into it.
DJ, real quick. Your light reflects off your glasses. So as you swing around,
I'll just take them off.
yeah.
Sorry. Neil threw away the diffuser that came with his ring light.
Okay.
So it's just very bright.
Okay.
But so I created a monster with my friend, but it worked out. He's good. But he really went and deep dived and found some other books that he had owned that he kind of had put off to the side and started reading about them. And he found out, oh, when you own a stock for less than a year, it gets taxed to that highest tax bracket. But if you own it for a year and then you sell it, you get taxed at your regular tax bracket, which is super important for people to understand. If you have a very low income and you made a lot of money through this stock, through this entire GameStop drama, your regular income might be your regular tax, but you're going to owe money on that stock profit that you did. And it kind of saddens me because I've heard people made a lot of money, and it happens a lot when people come into money. They lose a lot of it. They lose all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then
So,
they end up worse than where they were.
okay, so I want to backtrack real quick to where you said if you lose anything, you can just kind of write it off. Isn't that going to happen with these hedge funds that lost a lot because of the whole Wall Street bets? Like they lost a lot of money betting against the GameStop
They
and
still
AWC.
owe money though.
Okay. Mhm.
So and that goes into how buying and selling stocks works is it's like a multi-tier system of if I buy a stock, it through Robinhood, TD Ameritrade, Webull, or Cash App, because I know those are some of the places that you can buy them. If I buy a stock through there, I give them the money and I say I want to buy this stock at this price. And I put the order in on time to get it at that price. The order goes through. Great. They take that money and over the next 2 days, they find the amount of stocks I said I wanted and buy it at that price to then give it to me so I actually own it.
Mhm.
From what I'm seeing, I already own it. As soon as I pay it, I own. It's mine. I don't know that it's going to be 2 days before I truly actually own it. Which is why there's missing stocks right now because there's more GameStop stocks that were sold than are actually owned.
Okay, so and is that on the Wall Street bet
That
side
is on a
or on
couple.
the hedge fund side?
That's on all sides.
Okay.
Because all of the hedge funds, the retail investors, all of those apps, they have to go through a clearinghouse who knows who owns what.
Okay, so the way that I look at it is there's like 3 tiers, right? There's the sellers, then there's the clearinghouse, and then there's the owners, right? And so right now there's a lot of stuff that's stuck in the middle zone, and nobody knows that it's like purgatory. Where the hell is anything? Right? The clearinghouse
Go
that
ahead.
knows, huh?
Yes. Sorry,
Okay,
you
and
froze.
you're freezing too. It's mutual. It's mutual, okay? So right now everything seems like it's kind of stuck in a purgatory. It's stuck in that clearinghouse where nobody knows who owns what because it's all in that purgatory.
Yeah. So they're over the next few days, they're going to figure out where all these stocks are going, who bought first, because it's first come, first serve. And that's one of the reasons why Robinhood and places like it put limits, is because their clearinghouse also requires them to put down so much money on all of these trades. And they might not have it because some of these people might be trading on a margin, which means they borrowed this money while their money clears
Okay. So it
in the
sounds like
bank.
it's because of all the mess, like a lot of these places like Robinhood had to kind of put a freeze so that they could figure themselves out without creating
Yeah,
more damage. And that a
yeah,
lot, and because of these freezes where they're trying to make sure everybody is given their due process, and because of these first buyers that they don't understand it, let me back up. These first buyers, because they don't understand how the process works, they're getting angry at the process, right?
yeah,
But they don't, but what they're not realizing is that places like Robinhood are trying to make sure that they get what they have rightfully bought. And that's why they're putting these freezes in place to make sure
yeah.
that they get what they've rightfully bought.
It's part that and part making sure that they have the funds to do them, because it takes a couple days on not only just to own the stock, but also to get any money that you've put into. Like if I transferred $100 to Robinhood today, it would come out of my bank account immediately, but Robinhood wouldn't get it for a couple days. So if I'm buying stock on that money that I think Robinhood has, yeah, they have it, but it's not cleared yet.
And why is that? Is that because Robinhood's making sure that you
No,
are
that's
the
just
person that...
banking processes.
Okay.
It happens the same if when you go out and buy Starbucks. It comes out of your account immediately, but Starbucks doesn't get that money immediately. It takes a day or so. That's why when you get a refund, it takes a couple days for it to clear.
Mm-hmm.
Like all that's pretty standard, and it transfers right over into the buying and selling of stocks. So people are buying on these margins. They're putting money in and going, hey, here's $300. Great, I'm going to buy $300 of this stock. Okay, but Robinhood doesn't have that money yet, so they can't go to their clearinghouse and say, unless you have this much money, I don't want to work with you right now because it's too volatile. How do I know you're going to actually pay that?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
there's a classic process that we have in place that's always been in place when anything that kind of happens with banks and transactions. Then we have the overall, here's how stocks and buying and selling work, that's happening. And then we have the craziness that is Wall Street bets versus hedge funds.
Yeah.
Right? And so all of that is just coming to create this storm of just anger. That sounds like.
Anger and frustration and uncertainty.
Yeah.
And through all of this, of course, the hedge funds can still buy and trade at their leisure because they have in the bank all that money. But some of places like Robinhood and other places might not have that money, so they're clearinghouses, and they are very new to being able to use these clearinghouses. They don't have the history that a hedge fund has on yeah, I can make I can buy this because I know you'll come up with the money.
Right.
They don't have that history. That Robinhood doesn't have that history. So the
Right.
clearinghouses are going to be less on them. That's why, like, when you get a credit card, you're not going to get the $5,000 spending limit.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get the $200 spending limit until you build up your credit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
So to sum it all up, it's going to be interesting next year to see how all these people handle the taxes.
yeah.
And one of the things that is definitely been the topic of discussion is what changes are going to be happening in the stock market. Is there going to be new laws coming into place? I know, like hedge
You
funds have
know
been,
there will be.
yeah,
The entire thing with everything that's happened on it also just comes to light about like how much our economy is kind of profitable for the rich while pushing down the poor. Well, at this because they're able to do all these things that like once you start making money as a retail investor, they're like, wait, no, that's foul. You can't do that. But it's exactly what they've been doing. So all those laws, they're going to put things in place to protect people's interest, and it's going to be interesting to see what they put into place because they can't just say, oh, you can't do this. It's
well,
not a
at
free
the same
market.
time, this wouldn't you say that it's would reveal which politicians are in whose pocket,
Yeah.
right?
Speaking of politicians, the fact that Ted Cruz and AOC agreed on everything that happened with Robinhood, they were not happy with Robinhood. Ted Cruz and AOC agreed. That's how you know you messed up when those two agree.
Because that's been another thing that's been going around is exactly what law came into play. Something that had to do with DMC and a certain politician who pushed a law through for the government shutdown. Uh, Essentially, it was if you have any music that's DMC, you could go to like jail or something along those
Yeah,
lines.
it becomes a federal crime.
Right, become a federal crime. Uh, that revealed which politician was in the pockets of the music industry, essentially. So this will now like reveal like which politician, and usually it's a Republican politician.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz. There's been some crazy stuff with some of the what it's a lady Republican
Um,
that's come out who was talking about lasers from space setting the wildfires, the forest fires. Which lady Republican, sidebar, which lady Republican was it? Not a God, lady from
what?
what was her name? What was her name? That's not how I get to my internet. Her name.
Uh, Taylor Green.
Yes. Yes. Blamed wildfires on Jewish space laser. What? What? I don't know. That's a
No,
New York
those
Magazine thing.
conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeez. That's who you got in office, people. That's who we got in office. Vote. Vote her out. Oh my God.
So, but yeah, so it'll be
Sidebar
interesting
over.
to see. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what laws come about after this, what restrictions they'll start putting, and also how are these people who made bank on these bets fair next year? Because I guarantee you some of them are going to cry foul
Yeah.
next year. And it's just because that knowledge isn't common. I mean, taxes in themselves are a headache and a half. That's why you have so many different tax preparers and all the commercials pop up around this season.
Yeah, how do you feel about all that, by the way? We're getting close to tax season. Let's Halfwit sisters life lessons. It's like, how do you feel about all that? There's definitely been a witch hunt for I feel like a witch hunt for all these different tax preparers. We know that yes, there are free stuff out there, like the what are they? The IRS does have like free programs out there that you can use to prepare your own taxes. But there's so much in that goes into doing your own taxes that you could potentially do it wrong and screw yourself over.
Yeah.
I not even we're not sponsored by this, but I use TurboTax. I know some people that use H&R Block, but we've seen, especially over the last 2 or 3 years, more and more people come out against TurboTax and H&R Block and other tax preparers because they're saying that they're stealing money out of the American pockets, especially low income people who use those tax preparers. But what are the alternatives? How do you get these people, like, how do you feel about essentially these people coming at people, like, how do you feel about the whole conversation around TurboTax, H&R Block, and stuff
I
like that?
haven't seen those same articles, but I will say I know I haven't used I since 2017 I've been using, and again, not sponsored, but freetaxusa.com. Just because it tended to be just a little bit cheaper than TurboTax, but it does the exact same thing. Only there's a couple forms that I would have to pay for TurboTax as an independent contractor that Free Tax USA didn't charge me for. Um, and I totally agree for some lower income people, especially if they're a small business or they do business as, and it's their personal name like I do. There's so many different tax forms and tax codes that are so nitty gritty that TurboTax wouldn't tell you about or would charge you to know about. Um, wouldn't mention it because it doesn't save them money. It's more work for them, so they're like, I'm not going to mention it unless they ask about it. Um, and it is kind of crappy, and we don't have nearly enough resources for lower income and small business and just even middle class of being able to prepare stuff without being charged an arm and a leg. Because you might owe $3,000 in taxes and also have to pay 10% of that on top of that to a tax preparer. That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And then also finding out, oh, if I put stuff into my IRA or my 401k, some of that might be tax deductible. Or hell, even just IRAs in general. There's two different kinds. I didn't know that until last year when I opened one. And some are more beneficial depending on where you are in life. We don't have nearly enough resources for people to understand what any of these mean because it's all so complicated. And you get certain deductions for different things. And
well, I think we have enough. I think it's kind of the opposite. I think we have enough resources. I think we don't have enough knowledge on where to go for those resources. I think the barrier to entry is too high when it comes to financial literacy. I think that's our problem. And because that barrier to entry is so high, that's why we have so many people that struggle in both lower and middle class incomes. I think that's our biggest thing. I used to do a lot of
Yeah.
cryptocurrency. I didn't do cryptocurrency. I used to work with a lot of people that did cryptocurrency. That was another thing that was pretty clear to me when I was running around in those circles, is that the barrier to entry for cryptocurrency was also really high. It's a great thing. If I had more knowledge in cryptocurrency and I knew about it earlier, I probably would have gotten into it back in its earlier days. But I had no idea about it until recently. And I bought some cryptocurrency when it was super high and ultimately lost out on some money. But I did, I bought some cryptocurrency when it was super high. Uh, and it, and even now it's still like a good resource and it, to even learn about, but its barrier to entry is like just to know the difference in types. The difference in types of, I guess this is where I'll go into it, the difference of types of coins you can get and the different types of contracts that there are tied to coins, the different ways that these coins can be used to benefit people in the future. That to know any of that, I learned a lot of it within 6 months, right? But still, that's only because I surrounded myself with people that were constantly talking about it. And that's the same thing you would have to do with anything financial in this way. But do you have the attention span to do that?
Or even
Especially
just the
for me,
time.
but the time, the attention span, the time, or even the motivation. Like I said to you at the beginning of this, stocks, I'm not interested in stocks. Even though I know that going and starting something with Robinhood is simple and I don't have to spend my entire life doing it, I'm still not interested in going to do it because it's just not my thing. But it could potentially have like a high return, you know?
Yeah.
Right? But I'm still like, I don't want to go do that. Yet here I am fully knowing that I should. The same thing with a lot of these financial things. If the barrier to entry was a little bit lower on how to start an IRA, on how to do some things, on like why I should start that stuff, maybe I would go and do it sooner, right? Maybe it would be less of a hassle, right? Because right now everything feels like it's a hassle. And that's what
Yeah.
I feel is preventing more people from doing it, because you look at finances and it seems like such a hassle. Taxes seem like such a hassle to get through. And certainly the marketing around, like when you look at all the marketing that comes with H&R Block and TurboTax and any of those other tax preparers, they market taxes as a hassle and that they will take the hassle away. When you break it down to its fundamental thing, it's a hassle and you don't want to deal with it. Right? So that's where what I feel like is the biggest problem. If you can remove the hassle or what makes it feel like the hassle and lower that barrier to entry, I feel like more people would be willing to get involved with it.
Yeah. And there's definitely something to be said about that because it is so complicated that you do have to sit down and look at everything. I remember I started getting into stocks last year and I started doing I started trying to become financially responsible. So I was opening CDs, I opened an IRA, I started looking at stocks, and I started doing all of this stuff. And it's because one, I had some time, um, and two, I had the disposable income to do it, which is not something a lot of people can do. I'm very blessed to have had that. Um, but sitting down and finding something as easy as a certificate of deposit where you're just like, I just give you $1,000 and you pay dividends every month, and then in a year it matures, gets so complicated when you start thinking of CD ladders or which CD is best for you, or is a CD best for you, or is this best for you? And and you're right, it is access to that information and being able to access it and understand what it is that financial literacy. It can be a headache and a half where it's just like, you know what, I don't want to do it anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
And that's where, like, I used to go to this networking. Last time we were talking about networking too, but I went to this networking group, and there were definitely some people in there that were like investor or financial investors that you could go to, where you're like, I will handle all in the investing for you, or handle your money for you, so you don't ever have to worry about that, or come up with a financial plan for you. So that, right, their whole career is centered around removing the hassle for you, right? Or developing this plan so you don't have to worry about that level of headache, because you can't figure out what the hell a CD is, you know? Like like and you don't have to spend thousands of dollars buying books trying to just understand the basics of the of finance, right? Uh, I remember, but at the same time, they can't share any of that information with you. Have you ever tried to talk to a financial investor outside of finance? Have you ever tried to? They can't tell
no.
you anything. Did you know that? They actually cannot tell you anything. They can't tell you anything by law. Because if they do and they screw you over by accident because they gave you bad advice, you can sue them. By law, they can sue. So there was a group that I was going to work with, hair, once upon a time, where they were setting up this whole thing, and it was going to be like this whole career track that they were going to do, and they were going to be like, here's how to do your career planning and financial planning. And then I was coming in as like the marketer to help you develop your whole social identity. But when it was hitting the financial guys, the financial dude was like, I can tell you how to be good, but I can't tell you by law how to actually invest money. I was like, why are you even here? And he's just like, because I want to see you succeed. I was like, great, you're a motivational speaker. Thank you for coming. That was it. Like, because he couldn't do videos for, because it was going to be like this whole video thing. He's like, I can't do videos for this. But he was essentially there just to bring him in. I was like, that doesn't help nobody. Because the only way that he could help them is if he actually signed them on as clients, then built them an actual strategy that way. That's the only way he could actually help them. But yeah, unless you were clients of theirs, like actual signed on contracted clients, they cannot speak to you, because by law, if they told you anything that was wrong, they could get sued. And if you listen to anybody that talks about cryptocurrency, by law, you can't say anything either. They're like, we can say this, but it is advice only, right? We can't tell you exactly how to invest your stuff. It's all advice. So what we can tell you is this is going up, this is going down. And so they end up sounding a lot like the stock market. And that's why cryptocurrency so often gets compared to the stock market, because they have to use a lot of the same language that the stock market uses. Because by law, you can't say shit. So bad.
Yeah. So basically, the stocks, digital cryptocurrency, and hell, even retail is all about supply and demand. It goes up, it goes down.
I mean, I worked on a show called Ask Dr. Bitcoin for a little bit. I'll put like one episode down in the description, but I worked on a show called Ask Dr. Bitcoin for a bit. And anytime I was like, it's like the stock, he's like, don't you dare.
All in all, everything that's happening the last week, it's hilarious to me, and I wish everyone who made money on it the best of luck next year on their taxes. Because I know the first time I owed taxes, because all my income came from independent contracting, I was pissed because I was used to a refund. And I know my taxes this year are going to get a little bit complicated because I'm going to have to start adding in all the stocks that I bought and sold and get taxed on those. And
Yeah, well,
it's
cryptocurrency now
gonna be
has the same
fun.
thing. So if you're buying and selling cryptocurrency as well, they made it a rule that you now have to like report on cryptocurrency. Before you didn't have to, but if you buy or sell anything like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, you do have to now report that. You have to report that. And a lot of people aren't, and that's because the government changed the rules that it's now considered property. So
Yeah, the
before,
government wants their share.
yeah,
It's a
before
thing.
it wasn't a concern for anybody that was doing cryptocurrency. Like you bought cryptocurrency and you just held it, or you could trade it. But for a lot of people, they just held it. But especially when cryptocurrency in like 2017, like towards the end of 2017, when it hit 20,000 and it got everybody's attention, when Bitcoin hit 20,000, it got everybody's attention. Everybody was like, all right, now we need to be like, now we got to actually put some rules in place on like how cryptocurrency can and will be used. And that's when the SEC got in there and was like, all right, we got to look at what cryptocurrency is and how it's going to be used. And a lot of different conversations are still happening around cryptocurrency. And the only real thing that has come out about that is it is property and it will be taxed. Like, that's part of it. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, go ahead, put it down in the comment section below and let me know. But from what I took about it, from what I took from a lot of the conversations that was coming around about it is that it was considered property at that point. Because I stopped following after I quit my job. it it became property and it could be taxed and it would be considered taxed. And if you eat, whether you held it or you sold it, whatever, it's going to be taxed in the same way. So I feel, and speaking of feeling bad, I'll tell you the one group of people that I feel bad for, anybody that bought Ripple. Anybody that bought that Ripple coin, I feel bad for you. Because that was not crypto. That was not like Bitcoin. That was not like Bitcoin at all. And I'd go into it further, but we're getting not close on time. So you know what to do.
Like, subscribe, and hit that little bell icon so you're notified of all our videos.
And
And
we'll see you next time.
go down in the comments. Do you dabble in stocks? Are you an investor? Are you a retail investor? What's your financial literacy and what's your take on everything that happened over the last week?
And if you want to hear some conversation, if you want to talk about some stuff that has to do with cryptocurrency, I'm down. I'll brush back up on some things. Hell, if you want next episode, I will actually talk about some crypto. I still have some knowledge. I don't mind brushing back up on some things. I would actually be excited to see if they actually went through, because when I left crypto, they were still trying to classify coins. There are like a few different kinds of coins. There's there's the currency, which is like Bitcoin. There's the utility, which was what Ripple is, right? Or XRP is what it's actually called, right? And there's the security. So I would love to know if they've created any more token types, if they've finally came up with a classification of token types, because that was still something that they were working on. There's a group of people that I used to work with that were trying to define them themselves. So, and like what kind of contract types there are, like I would be totally down for discussing those things and bringing it back up. I still have a soft place for cryptocurrency. I'd be happy to discuss those things. So yeah, let me know if there's any demand for some of that, and I'll be happy to talk about that next time.
In the meantime,
Love you.
bye.